Hello, John. Can you hear me?
Hey, Heather. Yes, I can.
Good, good. Nice to see you. I sure wish it was, it says host has disabled participant screen sharing. So, oh, here, I need to start video. There we go.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Okay, there
Yeah,
we
my
go.
camera slipped off. So good to see you.
I know. Good to see you, John. I sure wish it was under other circumstances.
Yeah, it seems like every 20 years we do this.
It seems like, yes.
My goodness, I remember the first time I met you. I don't know if you remember in Virginia.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, yeah. So, I know your time is you are probably being inundated like crazy right now. And I know you're super busy. But I've had the opportunity to post
so
videos about Afghanistan, and I'm getting a lot of questions. And I thought, if you and I just had a quick conversation, this would be really helpful to a lot of people that are in my network that ask me questions, and they don't have access to the kind of information and people, my network of people that I've had, being associated with Afghanistan. And I think your voice would be really helpful for a lot of people that's asking me questions.
Sure. I mean, my pleasure. Anything that can add value to what's going on, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Well, a couple of quick things. So we met, 20 years ago. I remember you walked into my office in Virginia and we talked, and you were on your way to Afghanistan, and you were going to do your service there. And I had a lot of things going on with the local Afghan population and also online internationally. And then the next thing I knew, you were held captive in Afghanistan by the Taliban. So maybe for people that don't know your story, just really quickly, I know you've written some books, and I'll point my audience to your book so that they can really get into the details. But this is a generation of people now that I'm communicating with that have no memory of what happened 20 years ago. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about your experiences going to Afghanistan and what happened to you when you went there, and a little bit of that. And then we'll talk about today's situation and then what you're doing today, these days.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thanks for reaching out, and it is really good to see you after all these years.
Yeah.
So we'll have to make sure that it doesn't go another 20 years.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, back at that time in the mid 90s, I was in college and really just trying to decide what I was going to do with my life, and wanted to spend it in a way that was significant and helping people around the world that needed help. And I started learning about Afghanistan. And of course, at that time, was at the height of Taliban power in the mid to late 90s. And so pretty much right after I graduated college, I made the decision to move there long term and work with an international relief and development agency that had a priority and focus with widows and orphans. And so I've always cared very much about women's issues, particularly women's rights issues, gender violence issues. And so working with the women of Afghanistan was really something that was very near and dear to my heart. So I moved there March 23rd of 2001 with the one-way ticket, and really thought I would spend the rest of my life there. And over a very short period of time, the Taliban was essentially gaining control of the whole country, and they were looking for ways to really make an example of any type of work that may be perceived as a threat to the Taliban's ideology and mission there in Afghanistan. So, we became, I think, a pretty easy target for the Taliban because we were very actively engaging the local community, local Afghans visiting homes, which was all a very sensitive thing to do under the Taliban regime. So after just a few months of living full time there, I, along with 7 other colleagues of mine working for this international aid agency, were captured by the Taliban and ultimately imprisoned for 105 days. And they charged us specifically with the crime of essentially trying to convert Afghans to Christianity, which, you know, while we're people of faith and share our faith freely among those who we're friends with and wish to hear, we certainly weren't forcing anyone to do anything or believe anything. And that was really sort of the hinge pin of the whole Taliban position, was that we were using aid to convert Afghans, which was absolutely nothing that we were doing. And so we were arrested on August 3rd. We were there on 9/11 and subsequently became essentially prisoners of war during the war with Afghanistan. And then miraculously, after 105 days, we were rescued by US Special Forces in a midnight helicopter rescue after we had escaped from the Taliban prison.
Yeah, I remember that. And your story, you've written books and there's a lot of accounts out there about your story. So I'm going to ask people that are listening to you now to look it up, and maybe I'll include some links of how people can get your books and buy them and connect with you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's great.
So yeah, let's fast forward then 20 years now. Here we are again, and you know, with the Taliban coming into power and the heartache and everything that's going on in Afghanistan. And I know you're probably speaking about that a lot, and there's a lot on the news media about that. But I'd like to kind of hone in on some and give people some information that they're not going to hear in the media. And I'd like you to think about young women in America that you know, are 20 to 30 years old, maybe a little bit older. They don't really have a historical memory of those events of 9/11 like we just talked about. And the events in Afghanistan now have caused them to have fear. I asked somebody about that, and they said they're afraid of the Taliban, that maybe the Taliban could come to America and hurt Americans. Which, you know, I didn't really think of that, but this is a real thing that people are grappling with. And, you know, you know, being American, you understand that people that grow up here that don't have the kinds of experiences traveling and thinking about different people groups and learning a language, their perspective is very limited, and they're only getting certain information. So I'd like you to just take a few minutes and talk about fear in situations like this, and what kind of words of advice or comfort can you give to people that are listening to you that will be watching this video?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are some really big questions, and certainly, you know, over almost 25 years now of living in Afghanistan and now Iraq for the last 20 years, you know, I've certainly had my moments where I have wrestled with fear. And I mean, in the natural, there are some real obvious things that we can feel fearful about. I think, you know, I think for me, one of the sort of common denominators that helps me to combat fear is recognizing that by and large, the people that we're talking about, the average person that we're talking about, the Afghan, the Iraqi, and in the case of the world I live in now, they're people just like we are, that are longing for peace, longing for freedom, looking for opportunity, hoping for a prosperous future, longing for more than what their political environment is allowing for them. And many of them are suffering, and they're suffering without the ability, the voice, or the resources to combat the political turmoil that's around them. And so I think if we can look at people in these parts of the world where there's so much conflict and recognize that they are people like us that really have the same longings and desires, it can at least incite a greater measure of compassion for them and towards them. And then you know, I think we recognize that there are political structures and ideologies all over the world that are breeding conflict and turmoil and instability. And, you know, those are very real issues and they're complex. They're not easily solved. And so for people who are really compelled and motivated to do so, I would encourage them to find ways that they can engage those issues and try to help support creating durable solutions to the crises that many of these people are facing. And, you know, I wake up every day and I'm here because I know the people here want to be free, but they're not given that opportunity. And so we have to help create that space for them. So, and in the end, I mean, as a person of faith, as a follower of Jesus, you know, I believe that God is sovereign and that he is good. And because he is sovereign and in that sovereignty, he is good, I can take my fear and set it at his feet and know that he will meet me there.
Yeah, that's really powerful. One word that you mentioned was compassion, and I've been thinking about it as I'm listening to you speak. And that is a great way that people can exchange their fear to a heart of compassion. And by understanding and knowing the heartache of the local people and their longings and desires to live a peaceful life and to live, you know, what would be called a normal life. They have the same emotions. They are people. And for us who are in a position where we can demonstrate compassion and do something practical about it, we can exchange fear for compassion and love. I think that's really awesome.
Yes, for sure.
So,
and in many respects, I think we as Americans, to a country like Afghanistan, to the average person, we represent hope to them. And so if we can't project hope in the midst of the things that seem fearful, that can impact those who are watching as well. And so in the midst of what seems very chaotic and uncertain and very heartbreaking, no doubt, we need to remain steadfast in hope, no matter what comes, and continue to, you know, to fight our way through, you know, to a better day, because people are looking for that and they're watching.
Absolutely. Can you take a few minutes and talk about what you're doing now? I follow you on Facebook and I see bits and pieces of the work that you've done over, you know, the last decades, I guess, in Iraq. You know, if you can talk about where you are in Iraq and the people that you work with, or whatever you're comfortable in saying. I don't want to presuppose what, you know, your parameters are for talking about things.
Sure, of course. Yeah, so I've been here in the Kurdish region of Iraq for almost the last 20 years, pretty much since I got out of Afghanistan. And, you know, really our work here is a freedom work. I mean, we're doing a lot of similar things to what we did in Afghanistan: compassionate care, humanitarian outreach, education, job skill training, all those sorts of things. And really trying to create a space for local communities to have solutions to some of their community's biggest needs. And so one of the ways that we've done that in kind of the current time is through a place called the Freedom Center, which is actually a multi-purpose, multifaceted educational and outreach center in the community. And interestingly enough, we are inaugurating the center this September, about the 20th anniversary of 9/11 and our rescue from Taliban captivity. And so, you know, sort of that was not necessarily timed that way, but that's how it has worked out. And sort of the irony and symbolism of that is not lost, you know, on me as we recognize what's happening in Afghanistan And the fact that 20 years later, we can be in Iraq and open a place called the Freedom Center to the Kurdish people, it's really special. And so that has all sorts of services, language schools, computer training, job skill training. We've got a coffee shop, an internet cafe, and movie theater, a place for young people to hang out. And really it's not unlike the climate in many ways what the people are wanting in Afghanistan. You know, people here, they need jobs, they're looking for educational opportunities, and they're looking for the chance to build their lives and care for their families and have a hopeful future. So we are physically trying to meet some of those felt needs, and then also create a space where people can talk about you know, what it is they believe and what it is that they're thinking about in these days of conflict and turmoil, and slowly, hopefully, changing you know, a lot of the mindsets that that need to be changed so that freedom can go forward here.
If somebody wanted to, if anybody wanted to learn about what you're doing now, or connect with you or your organization to learn more about the work that you're doing, how can they do that?
Sure. I mean, the first place people can go to our website, which is globalhope.com, and they can find out kind of in a broad sense the different things that we're doing here. And then if they're interested in finding out about volunteer opportunities or ways that they can actually serve in projects and programs here inside the Kurdish region, they could just reach out to us through our website.
Okay, that's awesome. Good. I hope some people take advantage of learning about what you're doing. That's great. So
thank you so much, John. Thank
yeah.
you so much. Thank you for being a voice and a champion for the Afghan people and helping, you know, us as Americans better understand what's going on in that part of the world. It's really, really important.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I you know, I had a big change in my life about 10 years ago. I kind of left the nonprofit world and been in the business world and thought, you know, okay, my connections with Afghanistan and being involved in these kinds of projects, you know, I really haven't been involved and I haven't really said much in the last 11 years. But in like the last 3 days, I have everybody that knows my background, many people, just bombarding me with questions, and they don't have access to kind of conversations that you and I have just had, and they're not getting that on the media, and so this is really valuable. Just the time, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I know you're being inundated with you have a lot going on, a lot of communication that you're doing right now, and dealing with a lot of situations.
Well, it's my pleasure and a joy to see you again. And I think, you know, we need to just remind people we can't give up hope on Afghanistan. You know, this is going to play out over the long haul, and we can't forget them because the people they want more, and so we just keep that candle of hope burning, and helping people in the U.S. to understand what it's really like, and hopefully build some bridges for them to be agents of change as well. So I'm here. Let me know how I can help.
Okay.
It'd be my pleasure.
Well, thank you for being so willing to talk to me. And we'll be in touch on social media, I'm sure. And
okay,
you know, our paths will cross again probably in the future.
Sounds good, John. Well, God
right.
bless you and your family.
Thank you. You too. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.